Okay, so I missed June by a couple of months. Still doesn't mean I'm not going to do the next part of 7 Days to Sunny June. So here's 7 Days to Sunny June, Book 2 by Blue Bastard. Chapter 1, Monday, a.m., as we lie here. The first thing Sunset realized upon regaining consciousness was that the place she was now in had an atmosphere of stillness. For the past half-decade, it seemed, she'd gotten used to the noise of something always going, doing, moving. The AC in the house she had been living in for the past few months or so felt like forever now, even if she just spent a fourth of the time there as she had in that citadel of a warehouse. The occasional sound of a car driving somewhere, even the easily identifiable noise from a jetliner cruising many miles overhead. There was always something making noise, just that quiet never meant its full meaning anymore. Must be interesting living in a big city. But here, quiet reigned. Sure, there was the occasional tweeting of the birdsong, rustling leaves in the light breeze, things that silently screamed nature. Those weren't constant noises, though, so for the most part there was nothing. A peaceful nothing. Sunset was unnerved and yet calmed by the sound of silence. Anybody would easily be at ease with such pure, natural surroundings. But what unnerved her was twofold. First, she felt the raw power of abundant magical ley lines in the air, feelings she hadn't felt at all in a year. Not in this kind of strength since she had left Equestria. It did take a genius to figure out the mirror had in fact been another link between the two worlds of ponykind and humanity. Second, she was in some really old castle ruins. Likely she had a good guess of his identity, despite never having visited the castle before. Castle Everfree. Of course, Sunset started to lift herself up from the ground. She barely registered having to compensate her sudden change of height and perspective. Her skeletal structure having forced her to return to a quadrupedal stance. Also, such changes in her body were becoming second nature. Death either world allowed her to assume the form not normal to them. She would have no problem going back and forth between the two. The implications did frighten her, though, as it left her questioning which world she belonged to, if she belonged to either species in either world anymore. She got an even bigger shock as she turned to look at her reflection in the mirror. The fact the mirror was lined with silver instead of gold was unnoticed. The mirror's eyes too focused on what that lighting held. As expected, the equestrian side of the mirror was a reverse version of the gem placements on the human side, with Celestia and Faust marks on the left and the two moon crescents and clouds on the right. That's where the comforting similarity stopped, and the true nature of the mirror's origin became clear. The innocent-looking gems on the human side corresponded to outright colored characters of the alicorns he represented. The presence of two near-identical blue alicorns seemingly at odds with the recognizable shapes of Princess Celestia, though oddly only pink-haired, Queen Faust. Since they didn't know who the blue alicorns were, the idea of one of them having been a princess counterpart to Vice Principal Luna posed itself, but Shimmer quickly dashed it. Celestia never mentioned having a sister, so it's just possible Luna didn't even exist as a pony, much less as a princess. But that didn't change the fact the quartet of alicorns were all seemingly miserable. Their legs and necks shockingly chained to the carved iron weights running up the legs of the mirror toward the top, where the most unclear shape of the gems became the clearest of the ponies on the mirror. While Sunset didn't know who it actually was, she knew it was not Star-Soiled the Beard, leaving the question of the Black Unicorn's identity a mystery. His motives, however, were quite clear as he held the chains in tightly gripped hooves. Without a voice, his evil laughter seemed to ring in her ears, laying in the misery of his four captives. What a great way to be welcomed back, thought Sunset. Hoping the mirror's fierce and true side was not indicative of how her visit back to the world of ponies would go. Turning away from the mirror, she made a mental note to remember how to get back to it when she had to go home. If I survive, that is. No way Celestia won't eventually learn of my return, and she's angry enough to incinerate every last ounce of my body. Well, I'd be lucky. As it turned out, Sunset noted the room she and the mirror were in only had one doorway leading out of it. Of course, a 1,000-year-old ruin, said doorway had since long collapsed to prevent any possible way of entering the room conventionally. But Sunset knew only well from her self-inflicted downfall. She tended to do things unconventionally out of habit, so any thought put into whether or not she was even capable of magic The more powerful couldn't do as humankind, so he quickly spied what looked like a stable platform in another part of the castle and teleported there. The instant she reappeared, Sunset clutched her head and gave an anguished groan. Was teleportation always this hard? Sure, she was without practice, but now she was back in her own world. Sunset figured her magic would come a little more naturally. Her teleportation had now almost been as hard when she teleported to save Twily from being hit by that. Sunset's heart started to quicken as her mind's eye suddenly filled with images of her foster sister mangled body sparkled and rolled. Oh god, Twily, please hold on! Sunset wasted no more time, running through the ruined castle as fast as her legs could carry her, searching desperately for a way out. She had to find whatever was hurting her sister as soon as possible. It wasn't long before she stumbled into what had been Castle Everfree's throne room. It looked to be rather good condition, given the forces of nature thrown around for that hole would have been thrown between two thrones. Wait, two thrones? I know Celestia said Castle Everfree had been once the seat of power in Equestria, but why would there be another throne? Since I couldn't recall her former mentor ever mentioning having shared power. Nor did Celestia ever say having been on a throne alongside Queen Faust. In fact, Sunset didn't know a whole lot about anything about Castle Everfree, save it was where Nightmare Moon was born, and the first battle between her and Celestia had torn the castle asunder. Every pony was familiar with that story. It was the sort of backstory as to why ponies celebrated Halloween Nightmare Night! Well, I have been in a human world so long, I'm having trouble remembering the verses of their holidays I used to enjoy as a filly. Sunset thought, I'm wasting time though. I gotta get going. Sunset picked up her resolve and continued on her way. Though this was the cradle of nightmares, it was yet another reminder to Sunny of the evil that resulted from the power abuse. In fact, as she left the mysterious room of dual thrones, she felt the lingering signs of dark magic itself. It was tantalizing, almost literally whispering to her ears the promises of unlimited power and wealth if she was just to try to tap into it. The power to save Twily. No! She screamed. Having been both out of touch with their kind of raw power, even followed those false promises before, Sunset's immediate reaction was to hurry the hell out of there. Sunset found an overlooking window space and letting the overpriced cafeteria for the museum find its way hurtling down at a 9.8 meters per second squared. Trying to get the taste of magically induced vomit out of her mouth, Sunset cried, I'm not that Sunset anymore! I'm different! I won't fall for those lies anymore! She briefly needed to sit on her haunches and catch her breath. A few tears trickling from her eyes. Not even an hour back, and already she felt the temptations. Unless it's the work of whatever the fuck is hurting Twilight through those nightmares. Sunset gritted her teeth in anger. If that's what this evil wanted, to turn Sunset back to the dark side, then it was going to regret ever messing with her sister. I mentioned I love Sunset in this fic. I mean, the Sunset from the previous story that we did, she was pretty cool, she was nice, she was awesome, but this, I feel like it's the Sunset we all know and love. I feel like this is Sunset back to being normal. Sunset took a moment to get her bearings, taking advantage of the spectacular view from the ramparts he ended up on. The sky was crystal clear, save for the birds still flying off in fear of an angry ex-princess-to-be. Sunset could see all around for miles, the sheer natural beauty of making her push the darkness out of her head. Then she saw it. In the first years she had been trapped in the human world, Sunset had noted just how the landscape of Equestria seemed to have taken from the fanciful illustrations of human fairy tales. Now that she finally saw Equestria again, through a prestige eyes, not an industrially printed paper, it truly was like a fairy tale, just how distinct distance beyond the edges of Everfree sat a small hamlet of civilization. It was almost comical in that while the majority of it looked like a piece of humanity's Tudor-style cottage design housing, there was a stereotypical farm in the background, complete with a large red barn. A cloud over the town seemed to be producing rainbow-colored waterfalls out of nothing. The cloud itself serving as foundation for some house, probably a well-to-do Pegasus who worked for the town as mayor or something. In the middle, though, was a key landmark, a giant treehouse. Not a large, blocky structure built in the leaves of a tree. but an actual structure built from a tree. Then, on the side of the town farthest from sunset, a piece of what looked like to be tents could be seen. It reminded her of some Renaissance fair that last century had taken on her date some time back. Sunset decided the best course of action was to find Princess Twilight. Even if that's not the town Twilight's in, considered Sunset, then at least I could find out where to go. With that, the unicorn merrily teleported down to the ground right before galloping down what seemed to be an open path for the Everfree that would take her right to the town. And Celestia helped any mangy beast to try to stop this mare on a mission. About an hour later, Sunset emerged from the depths of the Everfree, finding herself at the sharp cut where the forest ended and civilization began. Gasping for breath, she made excellent time through the Everfree, and the limits of Twily laying on the bathroom floor in a puddle of her own blood saw to that. Sunset looked at the various ponies milling about the streets a fair distance away. I can only imagine Sunset also faced a couple of crocodiles, one manticore, a couple of timberwolves, and just decided to get some practice back in, and now's come back. A couple of scars on her, Cisa's panting. First thing she noticed was how blissfully carefree they all looked, smiling and nodding to each other as they passed. A stark contrast to how Sunset was feeling at the moment. The mayonnaise-colored mare looked down at the nearby pond and observed her reflection. The pony looking back was run ragged. Lines of worry and fear etched across her face. Every instinct in Sunset's body told her to just run to town and find the source of Twilight's nightmares as quick as possible. Her reflection told her otherwise. It wouldn't do her foster sister any good if every pony in town thought she was a raving lunatic. So with some reluctance, Sunset practiced putting on a friendly smile. It took her a few tries before she finally came up with something that looked convincing. Something that didn't look like she was crying inside. Taking a lungful of air, Sunset strode into town, keeping her natural smile. But what didn't feel natural in the least was how she was able to just stride to town with nothing but a smile. And nothing happened. Here she was, Sunset Shimmer, an extremely powerful and dangerous unicorn, walking into what looked like a sleepy little village, and no but pony reacted. Back at Caroline High, the past year had seen her become accepted as just a regular student, despite what she had done. Here, though, none of the ponies seemed to think she was any different, even though they were far more likely to recognize her for her worst crimes. Just smile and nod, Sunset, smile and nod. Or at least, that's what she thought, until the distraction caused her to bump into another pony. "Oh, I'm sorry," apologized Sunset. Her heart was racing. Hoping the pony she just made contact went immediately alert to guard. "Me, no big deal," said the pony, turning around to face Sunset. To Sunset's sole surprise, she immediately recognized who this pony was, having ever met this pony. Well, she had met this pony before, sorta. "Pinkie Pie?" she asked, double-checking to be sure. How do you know my..." As Pinkie, confused before suddenly come to a horrifying realization, gasping dramatically. "Oh no! You know who I am, but I don't know who you are! But I know everybody here at Ponyville, unless you're a new pony in town." Yes?" grinned Sunset. She did not like where this was going, especially when Pinkie's muzzle stretched to a wide, crazed grin, before the pink pony dashed off to who knew where. Pinkie Pie never changed. Sunset prayed it wasn't to alert the authorities to her presence. But at the same time, the fact that it had been Pinkie Pie, or at least a pony extremely similar to her, somehow eased Sunset's tensions. It wasn't as comforting as knowing what Pinkie had actually been doing, but Sunset didn't need to stress to freak her out any more as he had been earlier. In fact, if that had been Pinkie, then are the others around this place as ponies too? She wondered, assuming her leisurely trot to the tree in the center of town. She didn't know what the tree was in terms of being just a house or public services building, but as the centerpiece around which the town was apparently built, it would serve as a start to gather her bearings. Even though Pinkie Pie was here, Sunset was positive that meant the others were here as well. Sunset wondered if that meant Princess Twilight also lived in this village. Heck, she didn't even know which town this was outside of not being Camelot. Maybe the Equestrian version of San Palermo or something. Desi walked past the edge of one building, making the turn straight toward the tree. Her heart nearly skipped a beat as he saw the sign indicating the tree building's name. Golden Oaks Public Library. As silly as it seemed for somebody like Princess Twilight to live in such a common-looking dwelling, much less the public library, name being the same as that of the street upon which her family lived, couldn't have been a mere coincidence. Only one way to find out, thought Sunset as she boldly made for the door, knocked on it 3 times. "Just a second!" called a voice from inside, too muffled for Sunset to recognize if it was the voice he was familiar with. And then the door swung inside the tree, revealing none other than Princess Twilight Sparkle herself. Her gentle and warm smile dissolved into shock as she recognized the pony at her doorstep. "Sunset Shimmer? Princess Twilight!" exclaimed the unannounced guest, throwing himself into a bear hug on the flustered princess. Her wings flaring up in shock. They produced enough power to unbalance their owner, so instantly causing both Unicorn and Alicorn to topple to the ground. Sunset didn't seem to notice, her joy overwhelming. "Oh, thank goodness you're all right, and I found you in time!" "It's, good to see you too, Sunset," said the princess cautiously, pushing the now clingy ex-arch-enemies out for her so they could both stand up. "To be honest, I'm really surprised to see you, given, well, the last time I saw you was in that other world of humans," said Sunset. "The creatures native there, the ones we turn to with the hands and small noses, they're called humans." "Ah, okay, the human world, got it. But still, even if the portal was open, which it can't be, thus your presence here is impossible, how are you here? Wait, how do you know where I live?" "Would you believe finding you was nothing but total luck?" Sunset, a big smile on her face in an attempt to lighten the circumstances of how Twilight seemed to think the boundaries of space and time were torn somewhere. But Twilight's skeptical look didn't fast after a few seconds. Sunset's smile dropped instead. "Seriously, I don't even know what town we're in right now. After coming through the mirror, this was the first settlement I saw, and lying to me is not a good idea, Shimmer," Twilight interrupted, her face now a mask of distrust. "We both know the mirror between worlds isn't open, yet you keep insisting you came through it. Even then, this could have been the first settlement you came to, since the mirror is still in the Crystal Castle like last time, when you stole the element of magic from me and nearly ruined both this world and the human world." Sunset started to cower slightly, knowing this was the point where she was beginning to sink into proverbial hot wire. "Princess, please, I apologize. I should have been more clear. The mirror you're thinking of isn't the only one of its kind." "You're saying there's another mirror?" Twilight inquired, slightly curious now, but unwavering in her dominating position. "One that, somehow, no pony has ever known, yet would have to have been created from powerful magic like the one connected to that school?" "Yes," Sunset nodded famously. "I only learned about it by total chance myself, but it's in a sealed-off room in that old ruin in the forest, Castle Everfree." Twilight carefully scrutinized Sunset for a few moments. "Okay, fine. Assuming you're being honest about there being a second mirror in Castle Ruins, which you are going to lead me to later, it still doesn't explain why you're back in Equestria. That said, considering your history and meddling with powers far beyond your control, and no, I swore to change my ways. Don't you remember? I'm only here because I want to protect you, Twily." "Twily?" asked Twilight, confused. "Just because we're on good terms now, at least I think we are, doesn't give you permission to use something only my family is allowed to call me." Still, the princess backed down, giving Sunset some breathing room. She took advantage of it, taking a deep sigh. "Sorry, it's just, there's a lot I need to explain to you. I'm on your side this time, Your Majesty." Twilight slowly nodded. "Okay. Still, I'd like to know the reason why you're back in Equestria in the first place. Beyond just, you're here to protect me." Sunset dared to smile a little. "Just think of this as me repaying you for saving me from myself last time. Since," she suddenly noticed something in the corner of her vision, upon was glancing slightly over stepped to Sunset in the middle of her sentence. There, standing in the doorway, what might have been a small kitchenette dining room, was a perfect copy of Sunset. Well, almost a perfect copy. Pony's mane and tail were styled the exact same as Shimmer's, but beyond a second glance, there were multiple differences. For stars, her colors were much more muted. A coat of mulberry matched her mane and tail, and the tail mix was a corn powder blue and lilac, with eyes of crimson rose. Her cutie mark was a baby blue gem in the shape of a heart, radiating gems of red, purple, and yellow circling around it. But oddest of all was on her left leg. She started to be leg braids over the middle. On the central component was an embossed line of drawing of a heart, similar to the one in cutie mark, wearing a crown with two hooves persistent as if holding a becrowned heart. This whole time, Sunset stared wide-eyed at the new arrival. Aside from the color, she looks just like me. But that would mean... Sunset? Are you okay? Asked Twilight, unsure what was going on. Following Sunset's gaze, he saw the other pony in the library had been noticed. Twilight rapidly looked between the two ponies before shaking her head and laughing. Never in 1,000 years would I have guessed you two had the exact same choice in mane styles. Choice? Said the still unidentified mare. This isn't really style like, say, Rarity's mane. I mean, I brushed it, so mine doesn't look like a bedhead, but more or less it's naturally like this. Me too. Slowly agreed Sunset, worrying at the meaning of the other similarity. Twilight, sensing the need to do something, figured a polite thing was the optimal choice, and so introduced Sunset to the other mare. Sunset Shimmer, this is Raspberry Barrel, princess of the ancient regime of the Crystal Empire, and head of the House of Sombra. Raz, this is Sunset Shimmer, my predecessor, Celestia's protege, and the only other pony to be able to use the element of magic besides me. It's a pleasure, said Raz, managing a nervous smile, walking forward to join the other two ponies. When it rained, she held out a hoof, but Sunset took with some trepidation. Likewise, your highness, Sunset answered. Her smile was somewhat forced, and her right eye may or may not have twisted the idea that a pony looked so much like her and taking what she felt was rightfully hers. Though, of course, the similarities between this raspberry individual and Sunset herself were frequently duplicated. Like they were intensely of the same mind in terms of personally styling, and evidently age. I apologize, but I've been out of touch with the status of Equestrian royalty for a couple of years, as I don't recall anything about House Sombra being any standing. That's because there wasn't one. At least not until recently, since my relation to King Sombra was discovered. Sunset blinked a few times in confusion. It just who the hell is this King Sombra guy? Raspberry Seed started to question. You're kidding, right? I thought every pony knew about him. At least after he tried to reconquer the Crystal Empire. When Sunset's confused look remained firmly on her face, Twilight laughed. Sunset's been in a place very far from Equestria. Far enough so you wouldn't know what's happened in the last few years. Oh, alright then. I'll see you two have some catching up to do. Since we finished lunch, I better head on back to retreat. Another word, Raspberry helpfully helped herself out. You see, people, if I did take a break from reading 7 Days of Sunny June last year to actually read Raspberry Barrel's story, you guys would be confused. Okay, Sparkle, Sunset growled the second the door was closed. What am I missing here? Missing what? I randomly come in here to find a pony who looks similar to me, right down to the hairstyle that you happily introduced to me as a princess. You do know why I left Equestria in the first place, right? Twilight nodded cautiously. Well, yes, you wanted to be a princess, but I'm guessing that's not why you came back. Sunset shook her head. Nope, not interested in being a princess anymore, but... Once again, before she could explain the reasons of being back at Equestria, somebody came in to interrupt. The door to Golden Oak swung open to reveal a pint-sized dragon, colored purple and green, with a fiery phoenix chick happily pressed on his head. Hey, Twily! Peewee and I ran into Raz on the back, so Healy went with her and... What is she doing here? Sunset was, in a word, stunned. Wow, so, you weren't lying about being a dragon? Spike was unamused. Yeah, because dogs normally talk, don't they? Hey, easy you two. Let's not destroy the library, alright? Asked Twilight good-naturedly. Why don't you go up and clean your claws while I get you something to eat? Then we can get back to work. Alright, wearily said Spike, slowly walking towards the stairs, Phoenix still smiling happily on his head. But the dragon didn't take his eyes off of Sunset until he was past the halfway point on the stairs. He really didn't like being turned into a dog, Twilight explained. So he sort of still blames you for it. Oh, don't worry. He's still getting his revenge on me on the other side, Sunset said with a grin. Twilight eyed her curiously. I get the feeling you have a lot to tell me. Twilight glanced at the restaurant at the kitchen. You hungry? Sunset nearly answered no. There's no time. I have to say Twily. But then she realized he was feeling a bit peckish. Which is a funny word to say. It really is. Probably because he had been deposited her on lunch over the side of Castle Everfree earlier. Smile and nod. Sure, I could go for a bite. In a few minutes, Twilight fixed a daisy and daffodil sandwich for her guests. Two of them were sitting at the table. Twilight herself had nearly already eaten, but it started to boil a tale of key for both of them. Sunset then proceeded to give Twilight the rundown of her life since the infamous all formal incident. Starting from her improvised home had been demolished, and she moved in with the human version of Twilight's family. Of course, Sunset had intended to give Twilight a bare-bones description so she could get to the heart of why she was here, but the princess kept interrupting her to ask questions. This ultimately led to Sunset's abridged tale being drawn out at least 10 minutes before she finally put her hoof down. Listen, Twilight, I need your help. You see, the reason why I'm here is... A hand-pissed whistling noise in the kitchen abruptly cut Sunset off. Unicorn Mare couldn't help but glare, as it seemed every time she would try to breach the subject of Twilight's nightmares. Sunset stopped her. Oh, that'll be the tea, Twilight said, standing up to make her way to the kitchen. As he did, three sort of knocks sounded at the door. Oh shoot, Sunset, could you get that? Sunset rose to her hose and made her way towards the front door. She figured it must be some friend of Twilight's at the door, but couldn't help wondering if she might see Pinkie Pie or any of the other ponies she came to know as humans. Thus stopped quickly as her heart stopped when Sunset opened the door to a pair of large white unicorns clad in shiny golden armor. Sunset Shimmer! The one on the left asked as he and his partner leveled staring gazes at her. Sunset couldn't speak, couldn't move. Outside, just past the two guards was a sky chariot, complete with two armored Pegasi and another unicorn at the ready. Her heart racing. Sunset could only manage a shaking nod as her answer. The two ponies shifted their position slightly. Another pony might have missed it, but Sunset knew they were ready to take her down should she prove uncooperative. Couple of us, Sally on the right said slightly. Moments later, Twilight emerged from the kitchen, levitating a pair of teacups, only to find her guest was no longer there. Throwing her brow, Twilight set the cups down on a table, made her way to the front door. She opened to see a sky full of chariot, full of armored ponies, and a single fiery mare unicorn take off. Forcing herself to take a calming breath, Twilight shut the door and turned around. Spike! Did you send a letter to Princess Celestia about Sunset being here? Come on, Twilight. Sunset's the reason I had to suffer being a talking dog for a few days. Plus, she had to take over Equestria. I think Celestia needs to know. Twilight certainly looked pale. No telling what was going to happen to poor Sunset now. What's more, Spike was grounded. For a long time.